fantastic. My name's Duncan Richards, I'm the editor at SCP, and I just want to say thank you all for coming for our Crafts Week talk. And we're very pleased to have Florris Wubben with us today.
Hello.
And Claire Sartin from El Deco. Florris founded his studio in 2009 in Amsterdam, and he kind of works, as you can see, sort of at the intersection between sculptural and functional design. He was originally based in Amsterdam. He's recently moved to, I want you to pronounce it for me.
It's in Haarlem.
Haarlem, yeah, it sounds like New York, but it's not New York.
It's totally not New York.
He's got a great big new studio there, and there he produces what he calls serially produced unique objects. And he's very much inspired by nature. He's got a big love of clay, and he says that every single studio needs motivation and perseverance to strive. So, on that note, I'm going to leave it to Claire to say a few words and have a nice talk. Thanks, Claire.
Thanks. So, it's lovely to be in this space surrounded by all of your work today. And you work largely in clay, but wouldn't call yourself a ceramicist. Am I right? So, what was it about clay that attracted you as a medium?
So, the thing is that some people, when they're doing their study, they just know, okay, I'm going to work with wood, or I'm going to work with ceramics, and they specialize in that. So I didn't have like a sort of focus on any material, but I knew that I loved working with wood, and I love to work with everything a little bit. So I started working with wood a lot, and then a lot of my other designers from my generation started designing processes and machines, and I thought, whoa, this is really interesting. So then I also started to design a sort of extrusion machine, and in the beginning I started working with epoxy clay. That's a sort of two-component material that you put together. It looks like clay, but it has nothing to do with natural clay. And people were saying to me, yeah, why don't you work with ceramic? And I said, yeah, I don't want to work with ceramic. You need kilns and stuff. And I also didn't know anything about it. So actually, when you look at it, after a while, I just couldn't, I had to work with ceramic because it was the most logical choice for my process. So if you look at it that way, that is my processes and my machines has forced me to work with ceramic. And ceramic is like, when it has catched you, then it won't let go anymore. It's an addiction.
It's certainly not going to let go of you. But you mentioned the process, and that is absolutely the heart of what you do. What was the eureka moment when it came to working in this extrusion method? And can you explain to us a little bit about how it works? Because it's quite a difficult thing to picture sometimes when you see the pieces.
For me, when I see my extrusions, it's very obvious how every piece is made, but I can, of course, understand that that's not for everybody. To start with, I think it's very important when you see a design that it raises some questions. Otherwise, when you see a piece, you just walk by. So it's very important that you walk by a piece and you think like, hey, how is this made? The magical part of the outcome of my processes are that there's a machine touch and a human touch in it. And that raises this question that triggers why it catches your attention. So we press with a large, let's say spaghetti, how they make spaghetti.
Yeah, you said to me when we chatted before that it's like those Play-Doh machines kids play with.
So that's what I first saw. I first saw an image of two children playing with Play-Doh. And to be very honest, I thought I was the only one in the world who saw this amazing idea. And I thought nobody has ever extruded anything. So I thought, oh my God, this is like amazing. But of course, this is like the oldest technique in clay. But that gave me the freedom to experience. I'm not a designer who, when he discovers a sort of process, that he's going to investigate in it. Because then when I'm in the designing process, I want to work in it like a virgin, you know, and that gives me like total freedom to take a path that I would normally not do if I would have already done the investigation itself. So we press the clay through a profile, and sometimes this profile can also be like moved. So we can turn the profile, or we can like take the profile off and place a new profile on it. And yeah, that gives us a lot of possibilities. For example, the white vase you see over there, that's called the iguana vase. We press that in one piece because there are a lot of people that think when they see the piece, or that is built out of several levels. But we press that in one piece. And you see that when the profile is turned, you know, it's done by human hand. So yeah, it's not perfect. And this imperfection makes it perfect.
It's the charm of it. So the machinery you've created and that you use, it's not small. So you've recently, as was mentioned, moved to a new studio space.
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about the new space and what kind of having that new amount of space to play around with is going to give you the opportunity to do in the future?
Yeah, so this new studio space was really quite a big step. We first had 2 locations, one in Amsterdam and one in Halfweg. Halfweg is like 5 minutes from Amsterdam. And we decided to move the 2 studios together. What was really, you know, it was quite a logistic movement, because we have, you know, we buy every half a year, we buy like 20 tons of clay. So we have to, and also these super heavy machines, we all had to move that to this other location. So that was really intense. But now everything is there and the whole team is together, and things really start to run now. So that's really amazing. When you see that going inside of a design studio, that is really like a magical moment. And you know, in the beginning I thought, to be honest, I was in the beginning searching for 500 square meters. And then I found a space of 1,000 square meters, and I thought, okay, this is way too big, you know, this is way too big. But I thought, okay, let's just go in there and we can always like rent it to another designer or whatever. And now it's already become too small. So that's really, you know, if you have the space, you're going to use it, and you're also going to benefit its possibilities. And when you started to do that, you're automatically using the whole space, and this influences everything. Yeah. Like we're making now bigger scale work. Like what you see there, a bench. It's called the bunker bench, and this is like, if you compare it to the work we're making now already, this is like a small piece. And in the beginning, when we would make like a bigger piece, we were thinking like, okay, can we do this because we don't have the space for it? And ceramic needs to dry. You know, our work is like 2 centimeters thick, the wall, so it sometimes needs to dry for half a year. And then we have like very, you know, drying ceramic is one of the most difficult parts in my ceramic process. So we have like, we really made a study of it. We have like a laboratory in drying. So yeah, I have like 2 guys who like every day taking data like moisture, heat, that kind, and then some, I don't know what they all take, but they take a lot of data. It's not my part of the studio, luckily, because I think it's interesting, but not that interesting. And they put it all in graphic, how do you call it? Graphic, yeah, that you can really see like what is going on. And I was just telling you that every Tuesday we have like a meeting, and it's called the dry meeting, and it is really dry. It's really dry, and they're like really, they can talk hours about it, and I'm like, oh my god, you know. I have to drink a lot of coffee, you know, and I put a new can of coffee on, and I know this meeting is going. So I must not make too many jokes about it because it's very serious. Yeah?
does.
Yeah, I really respect them also, so I'm really happy with them. But it's a bit boring.
We have some videos that you prepared because sometimes it's hard to get the scale of your space and the amount of space your work takes up,
Yeah.
but also kind of how that machinery works and what you've created. So if you want to maybe show us around the studio space so that we can see some of the machines.
Yeah, sure.
in action.
What shall we start first? Maybe we first start with the machines because that's the most interesting part. The studio is it's just a space. Okay. Maybe before I kick something again, I'm very scared now. So maybe we first start with. So we make wall sculptures. They are like large panels that we put next to each other, and this. To be very honest, I don't like making movies of my extrusion process. Not that I'm afraid that people would copy my work because I don't care, but more that most of the time when people make a movie of a very intense moment, then things go wrong. And that's also a problem. That's the thing that I got from ceramists. That ceramists is very that you're superstitious. That's the word. So, and that's not very strange. In the beginning, I was not superstitious, but because you're when you put your ceramic in the kiln, you're really like you have no control anymore. And there are sometimes, for example, in the beginning, my former girlfriend, this is not the reason why we broke up, but I brought her every time when I opened the kiln, and every time when I brought her, the stuff was broken. And I thought, you're not coming anymore. And then she didn't come anymore, and the stuff was okay, but it's not. But you're starting to look at the smallest things, and you're using that not only when you're opening the kiln, but also when you're like doing stuff that is extremely sensitive, because when you're making a material, when you're making work, you're really at your most sensitive as a designer. For me, it's like that, and when people then start to look or make a movie or whatever, then it takes me out of my concentration. Okay, but I'm starting to talk way too long about this. Okay, so let's first start with this one here. So this here is, you can see here, this is like the most standard way of extruding. So here you see that with the machine, because this machine normally we press up, but we put now the machine on the side and we press the clay through a profile. So what you see here, you see the little broken shapes. So that's the magical part of the machine does this. And the thing is that sometimes it goes wrong, and we try to reproduce the little broken parts, and you can better start over, because it's like you're never gonna be able to reproduce these shapes. And yeah, so this is like one panel, and this other panel comes next to it, and you have like 5 panels. Yeah, so that's like one, and it's like this is like the second piece we make, because the first piece was like 3 meters by 2 meters high, and we sold that piece.
How long would one of those pieces take to dry, like a wall panel of that?
So we have sort of heating surfaces with tents,
Okay.
and that's how normally back in the days, like let's say 4 years ago, it would take me like half a year, and not because when you put them in the open like this, it would like dry in a week, but you need to dry it very carefully, and also because you have like a very high structure on the front of the wall sculpture, that starts to dry really fast, and the back dries really slow. And when you have shrinkage, it shrinks like this, So it's starting to look like a U or whatever, and that's not very ideal when you want something hanging on the wall.
No.
So it takes now around 3 to 4 months.
I'm sorry, I realised I got you back into drying.
Yeah,
Like,
you know.
the least favorite thing.
No, this is okay, but when it goes really deep, then I'm on. Okay, so what you see here is yeah. So this is like the extrusion that I invented a little bit myself, and nobody else uses this type of extrusion. So what you see here, you have here a pole, and inside this face there is another inside extrusion, and the part is that normally you can only extrude like only this shape, but when we now pull this up, you extrude massive. Do you understand? That's how you create the bottom of the face. So that's the whole magical part behind the extrusion process, is that you first extrude something that has only a wall, and then you take the inside out, and then you extrude like the same shape but massive. So together, and then you cut it off and you lift it off. And I didn't know when I created this extrusion technique that this is something that had not been done before. But yeah, I believe that everything is done before, to be very honest. But I haven't seen it yet that somebody did it before I was doing it. And of course, there are a lot of people who are using extrusion processes around the world. And but this type of extrusion, this is something only we do at the moment. Yeah.
Well, you touched on the wall panel a little bit as one of the larger pieces you started working on. But I wondered if you could tell us a little bit more about some of the furniture pieces you've been working on, so larger tables, chairs, and how that process, like the different challenges that come with working on that sort of scale.
Yeah, this is very, making larger, when you create a piece in ceramic, for example, a normal vase like that one over there, and then you create a larger stool, like the one on the side, the complications don't go twice, but they go like 5 times. So when we wanted to make like large tables, yeah, it takes like a long time to master that. Also to create a table that's a really flat surface, and that's also very difficult in ceramic. So we put a lot of time in the material itself. To be honest, the real secret is in the material. I'm not going to tell everything about that. And so we're now starting to making these large tables in glaze, and yeah, it's really, it also depends on what type of glaze you use, because, glazing, you can get like a real good ceramic object out of the kiln, but then you still need to glaze it. And glazing is like the next step where you can still fuck everything up. So, and I'm not really the best glazer in the world, but that's also a good thing, because I'm not like a very good glazer, but that makes the piece also more imperfect. When sometimes I don't do the glazing myself anymore, only the very difficult pieces. And in the beginning, the people who were doing internship or starting to work as a glazer at my studio, they really had to adapt to the way I was working, because sometimes you just don't hit everything when you're glazing. And for a glazer, this is like a no-go. They want to have a perfect outcome for the whole surface. And I really like the marble look in glaze. Yeah. I think that gives a really nice depth in the glaze.
You're quite experimental when it comes to your glazing, aren't you? Because we were discussing just before we sat down about some of the pieces that use more hand strokes and some of the different more experimental methods you've been using. Do you want to tell people about those?
The fun part is that you're using a glaze for maybe already 5 years. Like we have the Fuck Me Green, and that's really an amazing glaze. And we're using that glaze only to spray for 5 years. And like I thought for this exhibition, I thought, okay, let's just put it on with a brush and let's go crazy, like hand painting. And then you find out that when you use a brush, and it's very logical for some very known ceramists, you know, if you work a lot with ceramic, and it's like you study and you're like experimenting every day with glazes, then of course you say, Florris, of course, why didn't you know that? You already worked for 10 years with ceramic, you make your living out of ceramic, why don't you know that? I didn't know that. But we add this glaze with a brush and the outcome was totally different. And that's what makes ceramic for me so special, because it doesn't matter how long you work with it, you're still learning every day. And I talked with a woman who had like a high education in ceramics. She worked already for 40 years with ceramic, and she said to me like, Florris, I'm still learning every day in ceramic. How amazing is that? That is there a material that, of course there are other materials, but there are not a lot of materials in the world where you can still learn every day, you know, and that makes it also why it's so addicting. Because when you take this bunker bench out of the kiln and you see that the outcome is different, man, that's something else. Yeah.
It must be that feeling when you open the kiln, the kind of jeopardy of it. That must
It's like
be
a magic
drug.
box.
Yeah.
It's like the kiln is like a magic box. You know, you can also not look inside of it because it's like, yeah, you can maybe look a little bit from the top, but you don't see really the object. You maybe see the heat a little bit. But the thing is that you put it in, it looks horrible when you put it in, and you take it out, and it looks or amazing, and you're very happy, or you can start all over again. And that moment of that, and of course, you know, in the beginning everything exploded what I was making, because I didn't know that when there was too much water inside of the clay, then it explodes. So we had like waterfalls of exploded ceramic. Horrible. But now we have like 99% of all our ceramic works come out of the kiln well. So that's quite
Progress.
Yeah, a progress. You know, but when you're like starting to learn more about the material and you work already for a long time with it, not that long, but quite long, then yeah, you're starting to learn how kind of stuff work with, and that's really amazing, you know. But then you also think like, maybe I know too much, so maybe I need to work on something else. But I think ceramic is now the material still for me, and there's still so much to explore. So I cannot let go at the moment.
I wanted to ask as well, because I've been slightly obsessed with the amount of great Dutch designers there are, and you're part of that amazing kind of, there's loads of maverick design, people doing different stuff. I was wondering if there's anyone in that community that you've been inspired by or influenced by at all.
Yeah, there are some designers who I really admire, but more, you know, I admire them in different ways. You know, it's not that I admire a certain designer only for his work. No, it's also for his way of working. You know, or for example, his experimental there.
Yeah.
You know, so for example, Peter and I are friends, Peter and I learned a lot from him, and still I call him not weekly lately. I used to call him weekly, but now not anymore. But still, when I have a question, I can always call him, and that's really important. You know, when you're a young designer, it's so difficult to understand this world, because it's a very complicated world, especially the gallery world. You know. So, for example, Pete is an example for me, and also in his work is for me Studio Job, also Job Smeets, and also because he's really trying out what is okay in design.
Yeah,
you know, he's really searching the boundaries.
You're all pushing
yeah,
boundaries.
and sometimes it goes really too far, and I'm thinking like, okay, this is not my cup of tea. But he tries it anyway, and he does it. You know, so he has some balls, and I think that's really, you know, if you want to do this, if you want to become a designer, you really need to step outside of the crowd.
Yeah.
And that's really something that I think that is super important. So that's also why I think he's an example to me in that way.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest lesson to learn from your stuff, isn't it? Like, experiment, push the boundaries, try something someone might not have done before. Is that kind of your ethos as a designer, to just try things?
Searching for boundaries, but I think it's also important that when you start working in design, you just need to sacrifice.
Yeah.
And you need to sacrifice everything. You know, I was willing to sacrifice my whole social life, all my friends, family, everything for my work. And if you're not willing to do this, then, you know, it's not that you're not gonna become what you want. There are always possibilities, but, you know, it makes it more easy if you can just focus on one thing, because that one thing is like your everything.
Yeah.
And working day and night, you know, that's also 7 days a week.
Yeah, for instance, flying in early in the morning, flying out tomorrow early in the morning, it's everything.
Yeah, it's, you know, flying tomorrow morning really early to work again tomorrow, that's not, you know, when I was 27 and I was exhibiting every time on the Dutch Design Week and nobody paid any attention to my work, that's hard. You know, that's much harder than flying back with a plane. You know, because I just have to catch a plane. Yeah, just put your wecker and get up on time, and that's not very difficult. But to be determined and believe in your work, even when people say that it's not good, that's really difficult. You know, to keep working and I think that's
to keep working through those moments where it maybe goes wrong as well. Like those moments you're talking about where, you know, you'll have a kiln disaster and it all seems like it's going terribly. And you have faith.
Have no money. I don't want to be like a dramatic talk here, but it sounds very dramatical. But it's not easy, you know. You must really want this, you know. And I have amazing designers also at my studio now. They are really amazing designers, so talented. And they can do stuff much better than me, but they're not independent designers, and that's also a reason why you're not an independent designer, because it's really, you must really want, if you want to also have friends and have children really early, then it's going to be difficult. Yeah.
Do we have time for some questions, maybe? Does anyone?
No questions?
I've got a question.
Go for it.
I'm actually interested, I don't know how much you can tell us, but of like the sort of new work that you've got in the pipeline and new things that you're working on.
Yes, I can tell you something about that. So we're really focusing now on a new collection, and this is going to be a whole new path for my studio, so it's really, really exciting. And it's also, it has to do something with bricks.
It's a good tease.
I cannot say. We're also working with a museum, quite a known museum in the Netherlands, with this, but the first huge collection, not huge, it's going to be like, I hope around 10 pieces, is going to present it next year in New York. So we're really looking forward to that. Also, it's with a new material that is, it's not a new material, but for us it's a new material. It's a new clay, and it's also, we found it near in the Netherlands, so not in another, because our clay comes from Spain. So that's also interesting if you look at like there's no trucks that are moving all this clay around.
You're placing that loop a bit.
We're making with small pieces a large piece.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what I can say. So because it's also, now you know, we really need to see where it goes, and we designed now, we have a nice coffee table, a mirror, and that kind of a nice chandelier. Yeah, it's going to be really amazing. I'm looking really forward to that. Yeah.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
some of your large pieces, do they just go in as like one big chunk of clay or ceramic? Is it all? Is that
So the thing is that I have on my studio a kiln of my largest. I have 3 large kilns. One of 1 meter 10 by 60 that and 1 meter 10 high, so that's not very big. And one kiln of 90 by 90 by 1 meter 30 high. I'm firing my pieces, the larger pieces, at EKWC. It's a European ceramic workspace, and they have giant kilns there. And there are gas kilns, because I have electric kilns, because I don't want to buy gas kilns. Because, yeah, I don't have to explain that one, I think. But the problem is with electric kilns, you cannot go as big as with gas kilns. So yes, these pieces are in one piece. Yeah. And
do they get in the extrusion machine? Are they going in one big chunk of clay? Ceramic. Yeah.
Yeah, we load like the big our big extruder can press 64 tons.
Wow.
And we put in the kiln around 800 kilo in one pressing. So that's really something. So preparing this pressing machine is also a day work. And then the other day we can extrude. So yeah, it's so hard work. You know, loading the extruders is really it's really tough. You know, and we're really trying to make it more easy, to make it more to make it less heavy. But yeah, if you work with clay,
It's a really physical thing.
It's really physical. There are really some large guys at my studio, especially the extrusion team. You know, they're really they're quite some big guys. Yeah.
Hi, this is Megan. You mentioned about like yourself when you were a young designer, right? Submitting, I think that's me at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Submitting my work for every like week.
Mm-hmm.
So not that I like haven't got any of the good contacts.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you have anything to say to young designers?
So, so for example, I worked when I first presented on the Dutch Design Week, I worked for a year on a piece, on 2 pieces. I presented it there, and every day I was looking, I had like I made some small cards and flyers and everything, and I thought, oh my god, I'm gonna get really so much context now. And every evening I was opening my mailbox, and I was hoping for a mail like from Claire or whatever, someone like Claire.
Sorry.
And it was empty every day. And I thought, what I'm doing wrong? I'm doing something wrong. And I thought maybe they didn't see it. But the thing is also that sometimes your work just needs to evolve more, you know. And you think like, oh my god, this is so. When I design something, I think it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen in my life. With everything I design, I'm very honest in that. And I also thought that back then, and that was really that really saved me, because I thought like, I know it's good, so there's something wrong with you guys, you know. But that was just not the case, because when I look back at my work, then I see that it was not mature enough, and it just needed to grow. And sometimes you have a lucky shot, you know. The thing was that when it really started to run for me, because after a while I just sold like 1 piece, and I was super happy because I then had some money, and then I sold again another piece, but it just didn't, I don't know, it just didn't go. And then I changed my whole formula, and that was really a tough time, you know, because you really changes your philosophy. And I'm not saying that when your work is not selling now, that it's not that you need to change your formula, you know. The thing is that I always say, when you, for example, take a piece of paper and make a little plane of it, then somebody in the world wants to buy it. But the only problem is that you need to know how to reach that person. So also your work, there are a lot of people who want to buy it, but you need to reach those people. And that's most of the time where a shop or a gallery comes in. But the gallery needs to know about his clients, what they like. You know, that's why a gallery says sometimes they're like, okay, I want to represent you. That's not because he likes your work, that's because his clients like the work. You know, and if he says, I don't want to represent you, that doesn't mean he doesn't want to buy it or he doesn't like it. It's more like he don't see any money in the piece. And of course, when he wants to represent you, he likes the work. But it's more that I'm saying it like this because then you really understand also how a gallery owner works. But it's, you know, you just need to keep pushing.
You said you were changing your formula. What change did you make? Where did you go from?
So I in the beginning I made design pieces with wood from forests. So I walked through forest, then I found wood, and then I made pieces from that. And the pieces were really amazing. No, I'm not saying that because I'm still have people who want to buy the pieces. You know, they were really, really amazing. But they just didn't. Nobody wanted to buy them, and I thought, why they're so good? Why does nobody want to buy them? But the thing is that they saw the piece and they thought, Florris found that print for free. This is going to be a bargain. And then I said, yeah, it costs like 3,000 euros. And he thought like, fuck you, I found my own branch. You know? But it took a long time before I understand that. And so then I thought like, okay, how can I make also a unique piece, but more in series? Because that was what was happening at that moment in the Netherlands. And then I found out this extrusion process with these two little kids who were playing with the Play-Doh machine. But you also have to see that, you know. Maybe another person would have seen or was also like in search for another way of producing objects, and he would have seen that photo and just didn't pay any attention. But I saw it, and I called a friend of mine. He called Teun, and I said, Teun, this is the most amazing idea of my life, and I'm going to make so much money. And he's like, yeah, whatever. So I started making it, and in the beginning nobody wanted to buy it because I was working with the epoxy clay. And that's also with the epoxy clay, for example, why epoxy clay is really light. And people picked up the object and they were like, whoa. And I thought that was a positive reaction. But when a person lifts an object, he has a sort of expectation. And when it's very light, he loses the connection with the object. What makes him not want to buy the object. It's really stupid if you think about it, but it's just the way it works. But when when people are not interested in the work, there's always a reason behind it. And you just have to think about it, and you always find the outcome for it, the solution. Hope that answers your question.
Anyone else?
No? Big thank you, sir. We have a round of applause.
Thank you.
Thank you.
There's more drinks downstairs and some food, so please feel free to stay and have a good time.
Thank you.